whole thing. But I was saying, like, this is not just for technical. In fact, like, it's good to have people who aren't technical, because we need people to be aware, like, these kind of stuff are happening, and sort of informing the community, like letting community know, like, these kind of SIP stuff are happening in the open, just a little bit hidden in the GitHub, but we need everybody to be aware. That's how I think, anyway. So I basically was just saying, like, just tune in as like a live podcast kind of thing, just like listening, and you can work on other stuff. Just be aware of what's happening in Stacks. That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, the fact that, like, this is, like me and again, I'm happy Stepburn is here as well, but like, he and I found, this community, we found clarity, we found the infrastructure, and, the fact that we're now just even here with given the opportunity to, to propose something to the network is super exciting. So yeah, I'm not sure how much longer we want to wait, but when it's time, I'm ready to just, review things on my end and screen share and sort of fill everyone in on what I'm working on.
Yeah, so what I usually do on this code is I usually go over overall SIP activities. So I take like 5 minutes to go over the top level kind of stuff, what's happening in the SIP world, if you like. Then we'll get to and this week I'll switch up a little bit. I'll let Jude update a little bit about 2.1, and then we'll get to the main topic, which is your stuff. So maybe 20 minutes in, 15, 20 minutes in, then the floor will be yours. Yeah.
Cool. Excited to hear the 2.1 updates. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's coming like right now. So good to get a little bit update from Jude, and the voting stuff. We'll need to vote, and how we vote and what we're voting based on. Those sort of stuff are good to get a bit of update. So
yeah, I can take it from here. So the main features of Stacks 2.1 are either merged into the next branch already, or are under review and will soon be merged. I can give a play-by-play set of patches that are getting in, but I can give you like the main highlights just synchronously on this call. There's going to be some improvements to stacking, which I think are pretty uncontroversial. The cooldown period by which if you stack your stacks, you're forced to wait a reward cycle to restack them, that's going away. You'll be able to continuously keep your stacks locked. You'll still need to send a transaction every so often, but it can be done while your stacks are locked now, thereby allowing you to skip the cooldown period, both if you're stacking solo or if you're stacking in a pool, either way. If you are stacking and you manage to not actually get a reward slot, your stacks will automatically be unlocked now. So you're not, locking up your stacks for nothing. That's been a huge pain point, I think, for lots of users who are like really close to getting a reward slot. Same for pools in a similar situation. A third nice feature in stacking is that the POX sunset is going to go away. That's set to activate on November 30th, thereabouts. What that would mean is 10% of the Bitcoin that miners spend must be burnt in all cases. And that is a ratcheting mechanism, so that after 30,000 blocks, it would become 20%, then 30%, then 40%, etc., until the chain completely disables POX. That is being stopped. When 2.1 launches, the POX sunset will be removed from the code base. But these people who own stacks will retain the ability to temporarily disable it should it become a problem for whatever reason. We believe that a sufficiently large number of users are vigilant on the state of the chain, just what we have seen like on Discord and the forum and Twitter, that if POX was ever used by, let's say, miners who also were stacking to mine for free and do bad things to the chain, we could take that power away from them on a case-by-case basis. That said, there is a real chance that Stacks 2.1 does not launch before November 30th. In that case, I just want to make sure that you're all aware of this. The POX sunset would turn on temporarily. So there would be a 10% reduction in the Bitcoin payouts starting November 30th. But that would cease as soon as 2.1 activates, which would happen within a month of that happening. So in the event that does happen, there's no need to worry about it. It's just a temporary thing. There's a bunch of things happening also on the Clarity side for people who write Clarity smart contracts. Lots of new keywords and functions coming in to make life a bit easier for writing smart contracts. Lots of features for parsing data is probably the biggest one. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have a buffer or a string and you want to convert that into, like, an integer or something like that, there's built-ins for that now. In addition, there's a new set of keywords that let you convert between buffers and Clarity types. So every Clarity value has a canonical byte serialization that's used in the consensus core that's now being lifted into Clarity. So you can now serialize Clarity types into buffers and vice versa, which is fantastic if you run something like an Oracle or some sort of off-chain service like a DLC maybe, and you want to write signed data into a smart contract. You would then be able to decode it into any Clarity type, as well as, of course, verify its signature, thereby allowing off-chain services to communicate with smart contracts in this manner. Related to this, a few more Clarity built-ins are coming in down the pipeline in 2.1 that make it possible to convert a public key to a principal, as well as construct and deconstruct principals into their more primitive types. Both of these are meant in the service of not only supporting off-chain services relaying data onto the Stacks chain, but also doing Bitcoin parsing. New operations for dealing with slices, converting public keys to principals, etc., are instrumental towards being able to parse Bitcoin transactions from their raw format into a Clarity type. That is my hope is that's going to make it a lot cheaper for writing smart contracts that verify that Bitcoin transactions exist, thereby completing the read path from Clarity to Bitcoin. I have a library that does this today. It's very expensive to use. These new operations will make this a lot cheaper to do. So you could do something like mint an NFT to a Bitcoin address, but make it so that there exists a smart contract that can look for Bitcoin transactions that do things like list that NFT on a marketplace or transfer to a new address, and then reflect that state change on the Clarity side simply by reading Bitcoin transactions that do these operations. So that, I hope, is going to make it a lot easier to do things like interact with Bitcoin, interact with oracles, interact with bridges. And that's coming down the pipeline in 2.1. Above these two major things, like improvements to stacking and improvements to Clarity, there's a bunch of reliability stuff that maybe is less visible, but it still can't really be fixed without a hard fork. For example, right now, when miners miss blocks, it gives them a pretty sharp penalty in the probability of them winning subsequent blocks. That was actually due to a bug in the way in which we track miner activity over the short term. That's being fixed in 2.1 so that miners will be less severely penalized for a flash block, which is really out of their control anyway. So things of that nature. There's a few more in the pipe. Like if you happen to be using the some of the more esoteric features of Stacks, like you transfer stacks or you stack stacks through Bitcoin transactions, which is supported. That is much more reliable. Now in 2.1, there's no longer this possibility that an orphan to stacks block contains your stacks transaction, thereby forcing you to have to go, retry this on Bitcoin operation. We've made that a lot less error prone in 2.1 by making it so that such operations have like 6 blocks to manifest as opposed to just 1 block to manifest. It sounds small, like these things sound like small, insignificant things, but we can only fix them through a hard fork because they're on the consensus code paths. And they also severely degrade the user experience for miners or for people who control stacks through a Bitcoin wallet. I know that there's a non-trivial number of them that do this. So fixing that has been a top of mind priority for us. A couple of other reliability fixes, just to make the chain more resilient in kind of very rare cases that thankfully have never manifested yet, but could one day manifest. Like if an anchor block for POX goes missing, we're making a change to the way in which the chain heals itself from such situations. Hopefully we never have to actually exercise that code path, but it's more just putting it there just in case it does happen, so as to make us all sleep a little bit better at night. Happy to drop the full list of changes in here. It's obviously visible in the GitHub logs here, but let me see if I can go find this right here. We have a discussion on the Stacks blockchain project here. Let me go ahead and pull it up here. That has the it's called the time estimates for remaining work items, but as you can see, there's a whole bunch of small things and large things in here that have been fixed and are in the process of being reviewed. Feel free to take a look, and if you have any future questions about Stacks 2.1, feel free to drop me a line on Discord or even on this discussion item right here. That said, though, we're pretty much at code completion. We'll just have a few more things to get merged in and maybe a few small other odds and ends just to wrap up, but all the major changes have been written out. We are hoping to activate 2.1 probably within the first week of December is what it's looking at, first to second week. That said, the timeline of events from now until then roughly looks like this. We, the developers, would finish, merging in all of the requisite changes to the point where we can declare code completion. That would be coupled with the release of a SIP that describes all these changes in English and not code, which would be put forward to the community to vote to ratify and activate. Keep in mind, the next branch does not merge to the master branch unless the community says so. So that SIP would also define the ways and means by which we would receive the community's acquiescence to this change. The pertinent to the folks on this call who were here for SIP 12, which was the last breaking change we made, the way in which this would proceed is going to be very similar. If you are a stacker, if you are stacking either now in the current reward cycle or are in a cooldown period and had stacked in the previous cycle, by the time voting activates, you would be able to send a small amount of Bitcoin to a yes address or a no address. And these addresses are just burn addresses. They're not spendable, but they just are slightly different so that we can differentiate between yes and no. You would send that from the POX address you used so that we can link it back to the number of stacks you had stacked. The activation criteria for this SIP would include requiring that a large number of currently stacked stacks have voted, period. So there's adequate participation in the vote. And of that participation, a sizable fraction, I'd say at least 66% to be BFT, but more likely higher if we can swing it, will have voted yes. In addition to this, we're trying something new. We would like to make one of the two things possible, possibly both if time permits. If you are stacking through a pool, in SIP 12, the only way to make your voice heard was to require the pool operator to vote on your behalf, but that's of course suboptimal. What we would prefer instead, and we will make happen this time around, is if you are a stacker and you're stacking through a pool, you would be able to do something similar on the stacks chain. Use the same address that stacked stacks to send a small amount of stacks, like 1 microstack, to a yes burn address or a no burn address. This is something you could do from any wallet, like any wallet that supports the Stacks blockchain whatsoever. It can also be done through an exchange, as long as you're using the same address that you did your stacking from. That in turn would similarly allow the vote tallying software to identify what number of stacks you have stacked and count those towards either the yes or the no decision to activate. A third thing we're looking at right now, we're still iterating on this a bit with Mike Cohen, is to use the ecosystem DAO to allow individuals who are not stacking to commit stacks to a yes or no vote. That would likely be done from a snapshot of the Stacks blockchain taken prior to when voting starts. So if you had stacks at the point of that snapshot, and that height is still to be determined, but that would allow you to cast votes for yes and no. The activation criteria then for the SIP would be all three voting mechanisms must reach certain thresholds of participation, and within those thresholds of participation, a certain fraction of the voters must have voted yes. The idea being that we want to de-risk the possibility that the SIP is controversial enough that activating it would cause bad blood in the community. SIP 12 activated unanimously from all vote participation. I'm not, ruling out the chance that people will full vote no. And if you do intend to vote no, we'd love to hear from you sooner rather than later. So maybe we can make this upgrade more palatable to you. But the point of this activity is to make sure that changes like this, which are big and substantial, happen in a way that steps on as few toes as possible and are hopefully not controversial, but instead make the chain better for everybody. That's the reason why we have this voting procedure. Once the SIP for this is ready in the coming weeks, we'll send out comms as to how to proceed to ratify that SIP should you all find it acceptable. Once ratification passes, that's when we can merge the next branch into the master branch, thereby, making the code official, and then release versions of the Stacks binary for people to spin up and run. And they would be wired up to activate the new Stacks 2.1 features at a predetermined block height that is sometime after when the vote finishes. So you would have like on the order of like 2 to 4 weeks or so between when the vote finishes and when the Stacks 2.0, the Stacks 2.1 rules activate, in which you can download the node, spin up the node, and it would reach the chain tip and then proceed to follow the rest of the network in activating the 2.1 feature set. And that's all I have to say on 2.1. That was a lot of information at once. So again, feel free to ask questions async on forum, on Discord, on GitHub. We're happy to illuminate as much as possible and to disambiguate as much as possible.
Right. Maybe I'll summarize for everybody a little bit. So basically, we got exciting 2.1 stuff coming, lots of improvements, and some voting gonna take place, which we hope if you got any major issues, like tell us right now. Yeah, basically, and it's gonna come roughly beginning December.
That's when we hope to have the system activate in full. So all the voting will have been done by then. All the comments, discussions will have been resolved by then. Code will have been merged to master. Binaries will be available for anyone to start running.
Awesome. Cool. Maybe I'll let Jenny speak. Well, just quickly. Basically, maybe Jenny can speak to this, that we want to send out a bit of voter survey. Yeah.
Thanks, Hero. So this survey should be available either by the end of today or this weekend, if not Monday, but I'm hoping it'll be a little earlier than that. We just wanted to get an indication of the number of community members who are planning to vote, and also an indication of the level of informed or educated the community is about the 2.1 upgrade. We've put out a ton of comms about it, and we obviously talked about it on this meeting a lot. But as great as this meeting is, there's a really big community out there, and we want all of them to be aware of this upgrade since it affects everybody on the network. So that survey will obviously ask whether you're planning to vote, but it'll have a few questions about the upgrade itself. It'll also, as an optional sort of experience, you'll be able to test that interface through Ecosystem DAO that Jude was mentioning that Mike and Marvin have been working on. So that is that experience.
Stocks!
Who is that? Okay, if someone knows who is yelling, it'd be great. If we could kick them out. Jude, I think you have co-hosting abilities. Anyway, to the person who yelled, get out. Secondly, when that survey is ready, we'll send that link to all of you, and we'll share it on Twitter. We'll share it on forum and everywhere else. Any questions on that?
I think could be Dave, the one at the end.
What's that, Hero?
Could be Dave, the guy who was making noise.
I think. Does anyone else know who could have been? Oh, Jude's not using it from the community account. Okay, well, so it's just me.
Okay, cool. Oh, thanks a lot. So yeah, so maybe I'll start going over briefly today's top level activities. So thanks everybody for coming. So today we'll talk about the main topic, the non-custodial NFT staking by Jesus. I think that's his name. Yeah, so just because I see some new faces, so just to give everybody understanding of what this code is about. So it's all about SIP. SIP stands for Stacks Improvement Proposal. So here you can get an update of overall what's going on in the SIP world. And here it's a place for you to get some feedback, get some comments, or you can also advocate for your idea, like this week and last week. Last week was SIP 19 from Raphael, and today we have almost like a draft or early stage SIP that that he will advocate for. So yeah, so or anything about Stacks 2.1 is also a big SIP. So that's why you're hearing stuff about the voting and the stuff from Jude about Stacks 2.1 here, because it's all part of the SIP process, a big SIP coming down the pipeline. So a bit of quick update. So what is even a SIP? So SIP is basically just a document that specifies what the standard for different things, such as like stacking or NFT standards, SIP 9, 2.1, 2.05 from last year, SIP 12, or even like things to do with like governance that can be also part of the, or how we improve this SIP process. That is SIP 000. So it can vary from different type of stuff. SIP 13 is non-fungible NFT. So yeah, so just all this different type of stuff, we need a way to sort of document all this stuff and standardize and having a log so that everybody, the developers or people interested in the governance process, have a way to look at it and be consistent and the way we communicate across the network. So overall, so this is the sort of the SIP sort of overall process. It gets from the idea, the very early stage, to draft, to being reviewed, and to being ratified. And so I'll talk about on this page the later stages of the SIPs, some of the one on the at the later stage, such as SIP 13. So that's waiting for Marvin's reply, I think, and then it can be reviewed by the CAPS. So the consideration advisory board was activated yesterday or today. So yeah, we'll hopefully get the review done for SIP 13. SIP 19, I think Raphael is in the audience. I think last week he had some comments and maybe he's waiting to make some changes. If you want to speak to that, Raphael, feel free. Yeah, so SIP 16 was ratified a few weeks ago. So here are where sort of the top level things are. Some early stage stuff. So things in draft stage, different ideas basically on the table. So if you are interested, please go to GitHub. I'm trying to get Frigier on in October to talk about his authentication stuff. And also please have a look the safe transfer stuff from Marvin and Mike. So all this stuff are worth looking at. What you know, we can gauge an interest and see if anybody's want to implement some of these. Then when we have enough interest, they can get to the later part of the SIP stages and get approved and get ratified, etc. So yeah, so actually a lot of the conversation about SIPs are more officially logged on Stacks forum. So please head to like Stacks forum to sort of log your official feedback and comments about different topics, like I said, the safe transfer. A lot of conversations about minor centralization happening on Stacks forum, and also things like BNS. So those conversations, best place you want to sort of have your voice heard and have your feedback logged is actually Stacks Forum right now. So yeah, so please head over. So just want a quick word to congratulate all 3 caps. We submitted the activation sort of announcement yesterday, and big shout out to Jason for helping me on GitHub getting these stuff submitted onto the GitHub, because GitHub is a place where we want to have almost like the master version of the announcement, and who is in there and stuff like that. So yeah, so basically we have now 3 official consideration advisory boards, and they will go into this part of the process basically. Before, this part of the process was kind of together, so now we sort of making it more comprehensive, and separating them out, so Jude can step back, being on steering committee, and we have the rest of the other people from the ecosystem, whether from the big entities like Heroes or the community members, to help us vet all this different SIP coming through the pipeline. So yeah, just want to show everyone this just happened, and things like different documentations about their emails and names and their background, so you can see who are sort of reviewing your the SIPs on behalf, not on behalf, but they everybody can look at this, anybody can comment, but we have a professional of teams looking at this in more details, vetting it with everybody. So yeah, so that's all from me. So I'll give the floor to Jesus, or if you can introduce yourself.
Cool. Thank you, Hero Gamer, for for putting this together. Jude, for all the phenomenal work that's going into 2.1. Really excited to hear it, and more so excited to hear how you see a lot of like the buffer conversions being used. That was a really good example at the end. So yeah, on my end, guys, I am working on a review of a SIP that I have not submitted, that I'm still, again, as mentioned, in the early research stages of. And I'll be sharing a presentation that I actually whipped up, and I'm going to drop in the chat as well. So, if I'm going too fast or anything of that manner, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and check out this link. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and screen share and just review this with you guys. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so you guys can see the screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Cool. So what I'm working on is a standard for how we stake, or how teams set up staking, not just an NFT for fungible token, but how they create a staking contract that is secure and modular enough to handle staking multiple collections. And so getting into this agenda here is going to be why build this out. And why build this out? And then I'm going to touch on the community parts of it and the technical parts of it. So why build this out, and sort of my role, again, from my experience and sort of what I've been involved with in the ecosystem, just clicking on my role part. I've mainly been doing a lot of clarity work. So writing a lot of contracts for different teams. I've gone through the gamut of basically every contract that Marvin, Faridgar, and all the grades before us have put out. And so I've now kind of just been pushing the edge on myself. And, staking has been one of those things that it kind of makes sense to standardize. And so why? First and foremost, it's a really validated use case. Every single NFT collection that launched a fungible token and offered staking with it has shown higher retention, higher floor price, and forget the metric stuff. They've shown higher community engagement. Those are the Discords where the people who are trading NFTs on multiple blockchains, et cetera, they're at least coming back because they see that utility and they're engaging with the RStacks communities. And so I see that more and more teams are going to sort of go towards this step, releasing a fungible token along with their NFT. And so the second argument here is almost all teams have multiple collections, which makes sense, right? If you launch, your OG collection, and then, you see you're having a great time here, you can build off something else for your community that you like, or you have it planned on your roadmap. Teams are releasing continuous collections. And so that pattern of releasing continuous collections makes it really, really important that we standardize how we can write these staking contracts, because a big part of that is keeping this entire ecosystem for a team cohesive and working within itself. And so later I'm going to go through like an architecture of something that I think is suboptimal, and then versus something that I think this standard could solve. And so the third reason for, I think, standardizing this is whenever you're passing around contracts, that's when there's a large surface area for things to go wrong. Obviously staking contract passes around NFTs, and it also deals with contract calls across a fungible token contract. A lot of risks here if people aren't very careful on how they implement it. Cool. And so first, I kind of want to talk about the research that's being done here, and why I see the need for a grant or anything of that case. And so the big part of it is the community here, because we're building something that touches two asset classes that already exist, right? Fungible tokens and NFTs. And so I need to go through and talk to different stakeholders to see sort of what their experiences have been, what their priorities have been, and if they're trying to launch something in the future, what would they like to see in the standard, right? So existing NFT collections, again, I personally worked on Stackulants myself. Like that's been a collection that has multiple NFTs and it has a fungible token. Obviously, I've been looking a lot at the Spaghetti Punks architecture that they use. And so there's a couple of different architectures that have popped up in terms of how teams have handled this. And that's something that I've been doing work on, but I still need to do a lot more work in terms of understanding all the trade-offs between different architectures, which again, I'll talk about more of these in the technical section. Two, obviously existing collections that plan to do staking. So, there are a lot of collections out right now that they may have it in their roadmap or they may not. I'd also be curious to talk to them specifically because they're already locked in their contracts. And that's another conversation we're going to get to in the bottom. But if an NFT collection already launched, we can't insert, a line that would prohibit either transferring or listing if an asset is staked. And so there's a question of, okay, but how do we build this staking standard in such a way where every collection that already launched can still adhere to this? And so that's something that's required a lot of research on my end. And then again, of course, talking to fungible token teams as well, talking to Alex, seeing how we can standardize, both parts of this. And obviously a big part of this conversation has been talking to, the Byzantium, or I guess the Tradeport team, and Gamma as well. Again, in addition with Spaghetti Punks and other teams that have launched, staking across multiple assets. So, and actually, I just realized I'm not looking at the chat. So if there is chat that's going on, I apologize if I'm not answering questions. Okay, I guess I'll get through it and then I'll answer questions. So the technical part of it, cool. And so this is where it's, I'm going to review the questions that I'm sort of doing research into, what I think the trade-offs are and what I found. And so first, just want to give you guys a quick formula. This is basically the logic of staking multiple NFTs for a single fungible token. As you guys can see, what I'm using is the delta between block heights. So when someone, considered staked, or the last time someone collected, what's the difference between now this block height, that block height? You add all those up for all the NFTs that you have staked for one collection. and then you multiply that times a staked multiplier. And so from this sort of cascades the rest of the logic that you'll see in the staking contracts. And then here is an example of architecture that, again, most teams that did do fungible tokens and NFTs have. And I think the best example is, again, Bitcoin Monkeys, which, you know, they launched Bitcoin Monkeys and they launched Bananas. And then they launched Mutant Monkeys, which, again, every collection has a derivative collection, but they didn't prepare the Bananas contract in a way where they were easily able to stake for mutants. And so mutants, instead of doing that, they had to create another fungible token, which was Slime token. And it sort of created this architecture that you're seeing here. I think by standardizing staking across multiple NFTs for one collection, we can get to something like this slide. So you guys can see there's now a single staking contract, and admins could add different NFTs or submit different NFTs with different weights, with different payout weights for staking. And so you may want a parameter for optionally weighing different collections differently. Yes, exactly, Maddie. So, and I'm curious, I think you and I are gonna have great conversations about this, because while I'm, you know, I want to keep this strictly technical and clarity focused, I think the token economics is going to be something that every single founder is thinking about. So I think there's actually a lot of collaboration between you and I. So let's definitely talk after this. Okay, so from here, research that I've done and questions are coming across. First, a simple extension versus a monolith staking contract. The complexity of staking on a sliding scale, again, can vary a lot. From one, you have a single NFT, you're just staking it for one fungible token, and every block you get one of that fungible token. That's it. To, like we're mentioning, you have multiple NFTs of multiple sizes, of multiple weights, and even maybe multiple payout periods, all minting from one fungible token. And so the first question that I have here, or that I've been looking into, is, well, how do we account for all those bonus futures, right? Do we start with a SIP that's just a real skeleton, and then we could extend these futures, or do we make like a monolith where we just define a lot of traits in one contract and we pack that up? To give an example of the first example of simple extension, Marvin's Executor DAO is that architecture that I'm thinking about, where you could have a skeleton for the most simple staking experience, and then you could add different extensions on top of that. So that's one of the biggest research questions that I have, is I'm not necessarily sure the best way to architect this. To taking care of existing collections. And yeah, so there's a lot to consider when it comes to existing collections. You know, should we create a standard that accommodates for existing ones, or do we just not even worry about it? And that brings to like another interesting question, which is, well, then should we just create a standard where we don't really care to block listing or transferring functions? And so that's sort of something that I'm very curious to talk about the community in large, but like, what's the value add of pressing stake and unstake? I'm not sure about that. And I think as a community, we should think about whether we prefer the flexibility of, hey, any SIPO non-compliant contract is inherently stakeable right out of the box, or do we want to make that transition and say, no, we think staking and unstaking and preventing and having those locked up mechanisms of preventing transfers or preventing listings, they're worth the value add. We should keep them in. That's something that I think is very interesting and we need to discuss. I've talked to a lot of people and have different opinions on this. I'm not even sure where I'm leaning myself, though I do think lately I've been thinking I don't really see the value add in clicking staking and unstaking and preventing listings. I think I kind of see more reasons for doing it the other way around. But again, this is the reasons why I need to do not just silo research, which is a lot of what I've been doing, but collaboration with different stakeholders and seeing what do they prioritize, what would they think of these trade-offs, and what would be what seems like would make the best universal standard here. Another question that I have is, if you guys noticed or if you math speak, you'll notice that this function is actually a nested loop. And, obviously loops are very expensive here, or even pseudo loops using filter, map, folds, etc. Are expensive here. Using cross collection utility functions. So if you check like the Stacklets contract, I have a stake. Actually, I don't think I have stake collection or stake all. I have unstake collection and unstake all, right? So let's say you have, a lot of mutant monkeys staked and you wanted to unstake them all at once, being able to unstake them all at once, or unstake, maybe you have mutant monkeys, baby monkeys all staked, and you wanted to unstake all of them at once. That's obviously a performance question that I have. I know that, loops are already expensive. So nested loops are something I'm very cognizant of, what are the limits here? Does this mean that like, we can't have more than n collections of n, of n IDs? I'm not sure. So this is one of the biggest questions that I have. But again, this does sort of tie back into the value add of just in general clicking stake and unstake. Last but not least, so extensions and add-on features, right? And so this is where the variability comes in terms of how complicated staking can get. As we talked about, we have very simple straightforward ways, and then we have something where it's, we have maybe the different NFT collections have different varying weights, right? Maybe one of them, maybe one collection has 85 items versus one that has 5,000 or 10,000. Obviously, this one should have a higher payout rate. Maybe you should have varying payout periods within one staking contract as well, right? So maybe if we want to incentivize for some reason that like, this collection collects a lot slower or a lot faster than another collection, that's an extendability that we can add to this contract. And then bonus periods. This is something I actually saw in the Spaghetti Punks contract that they had, doing bonus periods and, sort of starting and stopping those. Again, something like that does make me think that going towards the executor DAO model here might make more sense. But yeah, these are the main questions that I have at a high level that I've been doing research towards and that I'm hoping to answer so that I can submit a well-researched, collaborative SIP to the community. And yeah, so that's all I have for you guys today. If you guys have any ideas, questions, concerns, please reach out to me. My name is @SetZeus, basically anywhere, but you'll probably find me on Twitter or Discord more likely. And also, if anyone has any additional questions on chat, please feel free to make them or just leave comments in the presentation directly. Everyone that made it out here, thank you for your time, specifically, and specifically thank you Hero Gamer and for putting this together, and Jude for the work on 2.1. Thank you guys.
Any questions? Please just feel free to unmute.
Hey, just Matty Stacks here. I just had one question. I've seen you mention that currently a lot of like staking is custodial, or like one of the benefits of moving to this model is that staking would be non-custodial. It's not immediately clear to me how or why current staking is custodial. Is there like a brief explanation? Sorry, is there a brief explanation of that?
Yeah, sure. And I would say, again, a lot of this language is very much evolving as we're, defining it out. But what I've seen right now is there's two different ways of staking that leads to what people are qualifying as custodial or non-custodial. And so custodial would mean, hey, you, Maddie, you want to stake your NFT X. To stake it custodially, you need to send it to this staking contract. That way, this staking contract is now in custody of your NFT and we're holding it. Then there's the other way of doing it that people are, that is non-custodial. And what happens there is Matt just calls a function that says, I'm staking now to this contract, to a staking contract. And so when you call that function, though, what happens is it usually flips a Boolean that would stop you from listing or transferring that NFT until you hit unstake. And so that is how people are doing it non-custodially, that you're leaving it in your wallet. I think the contract should be able to handle both, but I think the really interesting, the question that I have here is, if we can only make NFTs non-custodially staking by, preventing that line in transfer or in listing, I think, I think the better trade-off is just, do we really care if people are clicking staking or unstaking, and people are just generating by holding an NFT? Obviously, if you list it or you transfer it away, then cool, you no longer have access to everything that this NFT has generated. But that's one of the questions I want to answer is, what do people really prefer there?
Yeah, makes sense. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Maybe I'll ask a question, and this question and just to let everybody know, so Trevor sent me informed me there's this application on the grants program. So just for context, so Set Zeus submitted this grant on the grants GitHub. Yeah, so if people want to comment, support, likes, not like, yeah, just please go there. And I think it was it for 20,000, something like that?
It was for, yeah, the cutoff, whatever the cutoff was around 25. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, so this is probably, well, the first I've come across SIP that going through the grants GitHub. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. But there has been a lot of good comments about this on grants GitHub, just FYI, things like Jamil and various people commented on that. So yeah, just for context. Okay, and I do have a question. So, and I do ask this question to every SIP, just for to do the due diligence for the rest of the communities. So probably there is nothing, but is there any what other sort of side effect or risks can you see doing this thing, SIP? Is there anything that you can think of that could introduce attack vectors or side effects?
I think the goal of this is to reduce that.
Yeah,
I think the goal of it is to reduce attack vectors, because when you pass contracts around, which you do whenever we want to whitelist a new collection, right? Because we're adding a new collection to stake. Whenever you're passing around contracts, that's when there's the most sort of surface area. And so I think if anything, this is meant to sort of avoid that and to help, again, especially new developers, because every new developer, they're joining the ecosystem and they're immediately launching, NFTs and FTs, because that's what the documentation is there for. And so I think, people, if we're bringing developers and they're going down that path, let's continue giving them the toolings to, go down that path, build a community around what they're doing, build an ecosystem around what they're doing, and make sure they're doing it in a way that's supported by all of us. So that's, researched or documented, or we think is the most secure as a community. Yeah,
I agree. I like the personally anyway, I like the collaborative approach that you're taking. Yeah, sometimes working in silo, you don't see some of the things that you just never thought about, and by speaking to people, you'll find out new things. Yeah, so anybody else? What sort of impact do you think this will have? how much impact do you think, like what sort of, how many projects or what sort of percentage of project do you think can benefit from this in stacks? Or do you think, have you seen this traction on this similar sort of thing on Ethereum that's got traction? How would you describe the sort of the positive benefit that it will bring to stacks by having the SIP?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm thinking about this on two different levels, right? There's one, I think as a community, having this standard will make us look just a little bit more ahead than other blockchain platforms. Why? Because again, this pattern of NFTs and FTs and staking them, we're not just seeing on stacks. We're seeing on Ethereum, we're seeing on Solana, but they haven't really put out a standard yet, or they haven't standardized that experience yet. So I think by us sort of pushing the envelope there, we're now kind of no longer playing catch up, and we've now flipped on its head where we're now leading with these standards. And I think that validation is, again, not just within stacks, you're seeing that everywhere. So I think at a stacks level, it helps put us, it'll definitely help us look, just a little bit more ahead of other blockchain platforms in that experience. The second part, though, I will caveat this by saying, this is why I think the collaborative part of it is so key here. The front end and client side tooling for this is going to be challenging. It's going to be interesting and challenging because it's going to require, for example, Gamma that's already spinning up contracts, but they're not doing fungible token contracts, or can we spin up like and again, this is just obviously it's going to be part of the SIP, but like, is there going to be someone that spins up a client side way of just, hey, for whenever anyone deploys a staking contract, here's a front end that shows you all the NFTs that you can stake, how much you have staked, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the front end and the client side tooling that comes along with this is going to be a really good indicator of the penetration and the usage in the first early months.
So you're setting the infrastructures and let other people build on the front end and on top, and you are curious to see how that will look like.
I just don't want to, I wouldn't want to promise, guarantee numbers until that part of it is solved. But again, that's why I think the collaborative part of it is key, right? And if you see the comments, I am talking to Plutus, Obsidian, the Tradeport team. I am talking to the Gamma team and making sure that, again, I want to start talking to the Alex team as well, because again, there are projects that are launching fungible tokens there. And so is there a way that this staking contract can be offered out of the box on their end? So the client, the client side and the front end tooling to this and how fast it pops up around the standard is going to be a very good indicator of what the adoption rate is early on.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
No, I mean, everyone that stuck around, thank you so much. It obviously means a lot to be part of a community where, your voice is heard and where you can, just join in like 2 years ago and then, be proposing things to the network. So thank you everyone for the time and for the opportunity. I look forward to working with all of you.
Cool. Thanks for the advocating for your stuff. And there will be a video put out that you can share on the Stacks Foundation. Well, it's called Stacks Community YouTube channel, but I'll tweet out the links and stuff. So yeah. So right, let's quickly finish off the thing because I'm aware there's only got 4 minutes. So I just want to let everybody know what sort of topics are covered under this call. So things like voting, Stacks 2.1, which is a SIP 15, Bitcoin addresses, a derivation path, the different processes and review panels in the SIP process, things like minor decentralization that Maddie is leading, which have 3 SIP proposals. So yeah, different type of SIP stuff, and we do leave room for open discussions. We try when we have time in the end. But maybe one of those weeks we'll just like have no topic, and then we'll just have anybody can bring up anything. So yeah, different SIP related stuff, all aim to improve the Stacks network underneath the hood, if you like. So yeah, so any questions? Okay. So just a sort of reminder to comment maybe. So I think we have like, and this is how you get different collaborative effort going on, and having your feedback sort of logged and heard. So things like safe transfer, if you think it's good or bad, or if you have any comments, any idea to offer, things like SIP13, non-fungible NFT, SIP19, anything to do with 2.1 voting stuff, all this stuff, usually on Stacks forum. So please head there if you want to join the conversation. And yeah, so just to show what people, what we activated today or yesterday, was these 3 caps, technical, economics, and governance. So, and these diversity cap and ethics cap, we're still sort of working on the format that will take place, or how they will take place. So yeah, so these are all activated. They will be reviewing all SIPs relevant to their caps coming through, and Stacks 2.1 will be reviewed by all 3 panels. So, oh yeah, one more thing that I'd like to get people to comment on is the I voted sticker. If you like the idea, comment on Stacks forum. If you want to help out how to realize this idea, please let me know. So upcoming events next week, we got really important meeting from the steering committee. It's their first community update. We got Jude and Gina on the steering committee. We're trying to find more people. So yeah, next week, all caps, I advise to join or should join, but it's open to all community as well. And then on the 7th of October, we have independent dev gonna come and speak about their take, what they think of Stacks 2.1. So I like to think of it as a sort of independent review, if you like, of the 2.1. So and the last thing, just to shout out, just a call for SIP editors. Now we have the caps activated. So now I'm going to try and find more SIP editors. There's a link, but yeah, I won't spend too much time. So if you're interested, do let me know. Yeah, thank you very much, guys, for your time. And I'll end it here.
Thanks, Hero.
Thank you.